Now they're interfacing with that archetype. Well, it's fascinating because the longer they stayed in the presence of the phenomenon would kind of ditch that archetype entirely. Oh yeah, we're not deceased scientists anymore. We're the spirit team now. And here's what's disturbing. There were 13 of them. 13 of them, a coven, on the other side, and they were being baited on the part of the phenomenon. Do you believe I am this? Yes, okay. And then meanwhile, this is what the data says, mind you. Meanwhile, the phenomenon is using that time frame to construct a portal where it can actually download the program it's wanting to download into their world.
Welcome. I'm here again with Nathaniel Gillis. It is August 8th, 2025, but this will appear in early October, an apt month for this topic. Unless you're a patron or a YouTube member, in which case I'll probably give it to you a lot sooner. That said, Nate Dogg, regulate.
Nate Dogg, regulate.
Anyway, yeah, okay, I'm being ridiculous. What do you got for us today? You got some more theories or new theories?
Yeah, heavy stuff, buddies. So I've been working with pretty much one of the goats in the field, Steve Mera, and we've been doing like sessions. If you guys are interested in that kind of discussion, you can go to his channel, and they're called the NHI discussions, where he and I just kind of talk about both of our work. But what we're questioning now, more than anything else, after years of being in the field and reading case studies over and over and over again, we're starting to realize that the phenomenon, when it wants to, can have complete and utter control over our perceptions of it. And it's profound. The implications are disturbing because that means that our interface events with whatever this intelligence is to our species is moderated, curated by the phenomenon itself. And so when we go into houses and hauntings and even UFO manifestations, UAP encounters, what's really going on is that what we're seeing with our eyes may or may not be the phenomenon itself. A lot of times it's an extension of that phenomenon, of the proto-intelligence itself. It's archetype. It's something that is projecting a physiological structure into our reality. And so we first realized that in parapsychology. Again, I mentioned this in times past. Lord Auerbach, he's looking at this apparition thinking, okay, that's an entity. This is a malevolent haunting. That person actually exists or existed in history. Then they go back to their cameras only to realize that that apparition was never real. It was a projection on the part of the phenomenon, where at this particular case study, it was a ball of light that was floating midair, and it was projecting that apparition in that haunted environment. And so what we're realizing again is that if we're dealing with a phenomenon that has that capability, then it's possible, probably even, that what we've done is we've taken the projections of the phenomenon and created entire fields about them as if they even exist. They are as if they're not physiological constructs on the part of this paranormality. And so with that said, it's almost as if, again, that there are aspects of these interface events that imply that these entities are not at all who they want us to believe they are. Okay? Like, for instance, in the United Kingdom, a good friend of mine, Paul St. Clair, has cases of cryptids who are running up next to a car that's going 50 miles an hour. It's barely moving, but it's keeping pace with the car. It's impossible. Why? Because it's not a real entity. It's appearing to be real. The phenomenon wants us to believe it's real, but that's merely a masked down interface where, yeah, it's a physiological construct. It doesn't really exist. What exists is what is behind that mask. That's what we're actually encountering. And so we've seen this all throughout history. Even the Apocrypha of John, and I mentioned this in times past, but I'm going to kind of weave it into today's discussion, where in incubi literature, the entities are wearing the face, the physiognomy of the husband as they're copulating with the women. And then at the very point of copulation, they stare into the eyes of the experiencer, the mask comes off, and now they're making eye contact with something they didn't even know existed.
To advertise on Through a Glass Darkly, email throughaglassdarkly@gmail.com.
And so my point here is that if the phenomenon interfaces with us, we only have approximately maybe 25 seconds before it induces us the theta brainwave state, and it begins to project a false replica of reality upon our minds. This has been documented by Dr. Barry Fitzgerald and Steve Merritt. I mentioned this before in our discussions, where they had a practitioner of the CE5 movement trained by Greer, mind you. Let's go out to this undisclosed location, right? We're going to go where the phenomenon wants you to go. And as soon as this individual starts to engage with the phenomenon, they take a brainwave monitoring unit, place it on her head, watching it, right? Now, this is what's fascinating to me. She's staring at the sky. The phenomenon is baiting her gaze, seeking to be seen by her. She projects her intentions out there. Next thing you know, they're witnessing the phenomenon incarnate. Now, once it manifests, like some people were freaking out, but not Barry and Steve, right? They're pros at this. They're not monitoring the phenomenon. They're monitoring the brain's response to the phenomenon. What is the phenomenon doing to that experiencer? And sure enough, in about 25 to 30 seconds, over and over again, it initiated, right, theta brainwave activity, where it's inducing these people into trance-like, dreamlike states, to where the phenomenon now has complete control over that experiencer's perception. Now, what that means, though, is that it's probable that we have never truly seen the face of this phenomenon. And more probable than anything else, my friend, is that ghosts may not exist at all. Cryptids may not exist at all. These may be physiological constructs, projections on the part of the phenomenon, and we're not understanding it. The reason that's important, my friend, is that if they are not real, then we have been pig-trailed, propagandized by a phenomenon that wants us to believe in all of these different fields of research, right? I mean, hundreds and hundreds of years. Okay, I'm a cryptozoologist. I'm a demonologist. I'm a this, I'm a that. And none of them may not exist. They may not even exist at all, Sean. These may be projections on the part of the phenomenon designed to manipulate our species. Now, it is true. This is fascinating. I mentored an individual, and he told me this in one of his encounters and his family's encounters of the phenomenon. And he highlighted something, and I picked it out, and we kind of worked on that thought for a while. But he's like, Nathaniel, he goes, I had just got done talking to a friend of mine about, some of her paranormal experiences. And he goes, and I asked her, like, what did you see? What did you see? And this woman's like, well, I saw a demon. I saw a demon. And he's like, well, what did the demon look like? Oh, it's what everybody says it looks like. Mm-hmm. Just think of a demon. That's what it was. And mm-hmm. I said, that's exactly right. Because what the phenomenon is doing is it's playing into trends, right? And it's, again, Crowley highlighted this, and so did Kenneth Grant, where he's like, yeah, today they're called demons, but tomorrow they'll be called something else. Why? Because the phenomenon doesn't really care what we call them, as long as it can coexist in our species, within our perception of it, and actually hide from us. And so when we're dealing with something that has complete control over our perception of it, it's troubling. And I'm going to go through some cases where this has happened. And there are some key indicators that Steve and I are starting to realize are present. Number one, there seems to be a triangulation event during these interfaces. where it's not just the entity's image we're speaking with or interfacing with. There's a learning matrix tied to that entity. And what we're doing now is measuring the time frame to where, like, if a person sees an entity, we're measuring the time frame from before and after, right? Pre-archetype, post-archetype. What did it look like when you first saw it? Because what we think is happening, brother, is that when it seeks to be seen, it's seeking to be seen so we can actually help it co-create the image it's trying to perform with. And so we become co-creators of that image it's interfacing as. And so what we're looking at now is this fascinating stuff, is where, like, do you believe it's a demon? If the person doesn't believe it's a demon, what will often happen is there's a program that entity has to download. It's like, again, it's not an entity, it's literally a program where it goes to searches in the learning matrix and it tries to actively download it into that interface. I've had this with experiencers, right? With the individual that was abducted as a child. That entity was wearing that program of a cartoon character. This is what I'm talking about. When it was tested, when she said, I don't believe that archetype, it realized, oh my God, what am I going to do? And so it had to improvise its image. And she said, you could see it, like it's going up there, reaching for a program. What can I do? What can I become? What can I become? And when it couldn't do that, it was actively measuring her belief and disbelief in the image it was inhabiting. Do you believe in this? No. Okay. Oh God, what am I going to do now? And again, it's like bandwidth. It's like bandwidth, where it's reaching into the learning matrix, trying to download a new image to inhabit because it's wanting to do something to the experiencer. And so what we're monitoring now is that time frame, the response time, to where the entity is pushed into the corner of, I don't believe in an archetype. Give me something else. And we're starting to see the phenomenon evolve with the experiencer into that new image. The problem, though, again, is the compartmentalization of the phenomenon, right? Where we just put them all in different pockets of research. What we're starting to realize now, too, is that these are not really entities in and of themselves. They are more like programs. They can only run.
So is this like a control system or a control matrix of some sort?
Absolutely. Absolutely, Sean. To where the phenomenon, when it wants to incarnate an archetype, it will seek to be seen because it's that learning matrix. I'm not going to show you my true face. I'm going to help you co-create a new image for me to inhabit, and you're going to be in charge. Look at me. Huh? Go look at the sky. Go look into the eyes of the entity. And that's what this experiencer encountered, was the entity, again, trying to upload the image and its physiognomy. And we need to deal with this aspect too, where there's a time frame with some of these beings to where they can only control our perception for a certain amount of time. So yet, like within 30 seconds, they're in complete control, right? They're literally forcing a replica of reality upon your brain. And then, right, now they're doing things to you to moderate your behavior and everything. But my point is, it's evolving. These interface events, there is a hint of evolution and co-evolution taking place in that one short period of time. And so now what we're looking at is the fact that, it is a fact, that we're finding all of these archetypes in the same seances, in the same locations, in the same abductions. And so what these do appear to be, not entities in and of themselves, but programs that have to be installed. And they have to be, like, okay, for instance, Steve was talking to me about this the other day, where when the phenomenon is trying to hack like the household or the bloodline, where at first blush, we thought that the paranormal encounter was just for that experiencer, right? It's tailored for them. But is it really targeting them? And this goes back to, and I'm not going to murder this word, I hope not, but Dr. Gary Nolan's research, where doing brain scans upon experiencers, where you have evidence, scientific evidence of anomalies on the brain, the Putamen, where it's projecting reality on, or projecting a replica of reality upon that experiencer. And it's doing it so much that it's physically manifesting on the brain itself. Now, getting back to the idea of paranormal encounters not just being for the individual, we have evidence in parapsychology that the program can turn pathogenic, where if it's a poltergeist or a malevolent haunting, it could start in one location or in one person, and then it just splinters out into the environment, from one room into the whole house, from one room to the whole house to the whole neighborhood. And now you have neighbors who are now being victimized by the same phenomenon. It splinters. It's like a pathogen, a parasitic pathogen that once it incarnates, it goes out into the environment.
It's like the hitchhiker effect, basically, would be an example.
Hijacker. You're exactly right. And so what Dr. Gary Nolan was doing was he was working with a family in France, and specifically a child. There was a little boy that he had been interviewing and speaking to the family, of course, and the family says, okay, Dr. Nolan, we don't know what's going on here, but here's the account. It's fascinating. And for those who know this kind of literature in these cases, it's very similar to what Dr. Carla Turner's research suggested, where one day this family's in their car going to lunch, and the little boy's looking through the sunroof at the sky. And in comes this craft, a UAP, hovering directly over the car. He starts freaking out and describing very detailed, giving them a very detailed description of what he's seeing, right? Mommy, Daddy, this is what I'm seeing. This is what it looks like. This is the shape of it. This is the color of it. This is where its location is. So it's 2025 or whenever this was. It's modern, right? So now all phones have good cameras. And so the mother casually just takes a photo, click, looks at it, and what was on the camera was completely different than what they were seeing with their eyes. Completely different. Something was there because the phenomenon is present with us, but it's also absent from us. It was projecting a replica of reality upon the brains of those witnesses. So my point is that...
What did they see in the camera?
Oh, it was a star. It was
but not a real star.
Craft.
A star-shaped object.
Star-shaped craft, right? Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen this. I had one case like this where a minister who I know, I haven't talked to him in a while, but he had a very unique case just like this, my friend, where him and his wife were on vacation in Tennessee, and they're on the highway, and they passed this massive lake. And the wife's like, honey, that's a beautiful lake. Can we stop, park, and take a picture of it? Absolutely. They take a picture of it, and there is a metallic object hovering just above the water. Did not see it with the naked eye, but the camera caught it. And he said, Nathaniel, I don't know what to think of this. I don't know where I stand on the whole UFO alien thing. But he's like, with the surety, I can tell you, stone cold sober, we did not see that with our eyes. It was not there, but the camera caught it. And so my point is, during these interface events, we may not even be studying ghosts at all, brother. We may not have any idea of what this is all about. One thing is true, though, is that the reason it weaponizes these archetypes and kind of helps us co-create them is so that it can moderate our behavior, to make us think, right? I do A, B, and C, when truthfully, that's not the case. There's something behind the mask that's in charge of the whole event, right? And here's the problem we're facing. The control mechanism employed by the phenomenon says that you're not supposed to remember what's actually going on. If you do remember it, we're going to lie about you. We're going to gaslight you, right? If you don't shut up about it, you are successful getting your story out, we're going to take you out completely. And so it's a war for our perception, brother.
How much do you think the powers that be know about this stuff?
I think they're in tune with it. And the problem is, though, is that whatever we're dealing with if it can simulate portions of reality in hauntings, in interface events, how much of reality is being simulated by them that we think is real? That we're like, oh, that's real. That's real. No, it's not. You know, Steve was telling me about a case where a UAP landed, and it landed near a bunch of trees. It was there for a while. And so the investigators show up. Not only is the UAP gone, the trees went with it. The trees went with it, Sean. What are we talking about here, brother? This is not our planet. This is not our reality. This is an artificial construct. And what we're realizing, I'm telling you, this is where I've had conversations with other researchers about this. Like the stuff that's top secret is the fact that this is not our planet. It's not alien. It's like ultra terrestrials in that they exist, right, just outside of our vision. And it's possible, and this is where the data is now, that our entire species was created with that disability to where now they can have access to
That's
our
what Mira
reality.
was saying, because he was saying something akin to compared to the rest of the animal world,
Right.
like bees have a far more sophisticated version of reality. I wouldn't say ticks do. Ticks actually have a less sophisticated, but animals, like, you know, birds probably have a more extended visual range. Dogs, you know, and cats, more extended audio range, etc. So, yeah, and I think Steve said we were engineered to be oblivious to the presence of whatever this is.
Yes, you're exactly right. And it's an unfortunate truth, you know? This is not our world. And the paranormality aspect of it, it's the black cat in the Matrix. It should not exist, right? What they realized, especially in that movie, even in Dark City, that preceded it, was that, you know, the program glitched. It glitched. And when it glitches, it's the phenomenon, or at least the program glitching, saying, hey, listen, that should not be there. It's paranormal. Why is it paranormal? Because it's the program evolving and what we're witnessing it as experiencers, not realizing that, oh my God, if it can simulate this part of reality, how much of reality is it actually in control of? And to get back to Dr. Nolan's research, where like there's a lot of deconstruction going on in the field, by the way, to where like what we used to believe about the phenomenon is no longer there. Like we've completely deconstructed, started from square one. Now we're starting to realize that these paranormal events may not even be for us as individuals. They may be tailored to us, but it may also be the phenomenon, and this is crazy, literally tailoring that experience to enter into the bloodline of that experiencer. Case in point, Dr. Gary Nolan, first generation experiencer. Can we do some brain scans? We want to see what's going on up there. You know, you've had some experiences, right? Sure. What's that abnormality? Oh, okay. Let's go. And again, this took years and years to do, by the way. Let's go to the second generation, right? Okay. Let's ask you the same thing. Okay, sign this consent form. Can we do some brain scans? Have you had any paranormal experiences? Absolutely. Okay. Same abnormality on the same part of the brain. Third generation shows up. Here's what's scary about all of this. No paranormal experience, but they still have the abnormality on their brain. Two possibilities. Good.
Well, have you seen these savants that you ask them what day of the week September 15th, 1974 was, and they just tell you the answer, and then you say, what's 2 + 2, and they say 5?
Yeah, I've seen that.
Apparently that's the same. It's called 8-pentamen.
Yes.
They have more, like 8 times the folds or something like that, and they're called 8-pentamen. So it's almost as if they're accessing some ethereal cloud of information, because they're not getting that from their brains, right? They're just they can't do basic mathematics, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They're just pulling it out of the cloud. So it's probably related, or I don't know, probably, but it might be related to the same, call it information field.
Mhm. Absolutely. And even like the telepathy tapes point to that existence as well. But whatever we're dealing with, Sean, again,
So does remote viewing, by the way.
yes, absolutely. But it's to the point now where it's like, okay, maybe none of this is the phenomenon, the real phenomenon. These may be glitches in the matrix where when these beings incarnate our reality, it's like they're entering into an artificial habitat. They walk in and out at will, and we're not aware
What
of
do
it
they
until
call
it's
it?
too
The
late.
shadow biome? Something like that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so that's the kind of research we're doing, and we're realizing that at one point we were studying entities, we thought, and we realized no, they behave more like programs. They rely on a learning matrix to exist in our world. And it's fascinating. This goes back to testing the phenomenon. You know, Steve was talking about one day, talking about how a husband and a wife, this will freak you out. I probably told you guys this before, but where a husband and wife are arguing, and the husband notices that there's this figurine on the table moving slowly. So in an act of rage, a fit of rage, he grabs that figurine, throws it out the front door, it shatters to 1,000 pieces on the ground, walks back in, gets back on the table. Never shattered. Goes outside to clean up the mess. It's gone. Gone. The phenomenon had put it back together again and replaced it. So here's what's frustrating. When people tell me that that is an unclean spirit, I wish it was, but that's not what we're dealing with, bud. We're dealing with something that is in control of parts, if not all, of reality. And it works like a program. Stephen Barry, they take these apports, by the way, is what it was, take them out of the house. Again, this is what we're doing, right? Monitoring, measuring the program. How long does it take to adjust to new data? Oh my God, it's fascinating research. And so sure enough, 3 days later, they'll get a phone call from the family. Thank you guys for doing what you've done. You know, you guys have really helped us out. Thank you for saving us. Phenomenon's not here anymore. I can't believe you got rid of it. Well, we didn't get rid of it. It's still there. It's triangulating, brother. How can I incarnate? And so they took one of the apports, placed it back in the home. The phenomenon evolves, right? And then in the learning matrix, it then downloads the program back through the apport into that home. And now poltergeist activity takes place. So whatever we're experiencing again is that these interface events are extensions of the phenomenon, but they may not exist in and of themselves, right? In other words, like it's the observer effect, which I know you've heard me discuss in times past, where when the phenomenon wants to co-create an archetype with you, it will seek to be seen because it's the observer effect. It's collapsing. It's using our consciousness to collapse itself into an image in interfaces with us. It's so literally, it's like, okay, well, I need to incarnate, but I need your vision. I need to be observed in order to do this. I'm going to seek to be seen. Now, if that's the point, if that's really what's going on, then ghosts are not seen because they exist. They exist because they are seen. It's that interface where, okay, yeah, sure, it exists. And it doesn't. It doesn't. This gets back to a conversation you and I were having about Chris Bledsoe in the green room, I guess, where in his testimony, he's like, yeah, he goes, I was being followed by an orb, a ball of light. And the host of the show says, well, was that your first initial encounter with this thing? He goes, no. He goes, I was walking in the woods and I heard footsteps behind me. Footsteps. Turns around. There's no legs there. Those aren't really footsteps. It was the orb projecting that noise to make him think somebody was following him. And so what this is called, by the way, is epiphenomenon, not phenomenon, epiphenomenon, where these are secondary consequences of the interface event, where on the peripheral, right, it's a shadow figure until it locks eyes with us, and then it uses our categories, our archetypes, to co-create itself. And that is what appears to be going on. That being the case, we might not be studying ghosts in the afterlife at all. Demonology may not even exist. All of these fields of research could very well be controlled by the proto-intelligence itself, by the phenomenon. Go ahead and believe I'm all of these things. I don't care. I'm hiding. And it gets back to just the parapsychology too, where early researchers believed that these were mindless, unguided processes, or like involuntary workings of the psychology of a victim, like specifically a young girl, if she was going through puberty, right? They blamed it. It's really
like Barry Taff, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And so originally they thought, okay, yeah, this is just somebody that's going through something. There's a lot of stress, and somehow they're hacking into energy and this kinetic energy in the room and moving objects. That's not true at all. That's a program too. There's a control mechanism there. Again, when Steve was talking one day, he was talking about how, I don't know if I mentioned this, I know I did before we did the show, but where they were in a haunted house, there's a lot of activity going on, and the phenomenon knocks something off of a shelf in the laundry room. It shakes the foundation of the home. What's it doing? Come look. I want you to come into this room. Come over here. Check it out. So that they know this because they went and ran an experiment. They put the object back on the shelf, pushed it off, it hit the ground, barely made any noise. And so the phenomenon intentionally amplified that manifestation, baiting them, right? Go here and interface. And when they interface, the phenomenon will go through various archetypes, various programs to get them into this initiatory event. Nathaniel, what do you mean by initiatory event? Well, and Steve just put some of this information out on his channel about Robin Foy and stuff, where during the Skull experiment in the 90s, that they had a group of parapsychologists and psychic mediums and the whole lot. It was really fascinating stuff. But the phenomenon was introducing programs to them during the seance, right? Here's a UAP. Here's a flying disc. Here's a ball of light. Here's a hand that you can touch that materialized out of nowhere. But mentally, they were talking to these entities through EVPs and stuff. And originally, these beings told them that they were DC scientists. So now, right, that's a program. Now they're interfacing with that archetype. Well, it's fascinating because the longer they stayed in the presence of the phenomenon would kind of ditch that archetype entirely. Oh, yeah, we're not DC scientists anymore. We're the spirit team now. And here's what's disturbing. There were 13 of them. 13 of them, a coven, on the other side, and they were being baited on the part of the phenomenon. Do you believe I am this? Yes. Okay. And then meanwhile, this is what the data says, mind you. Meanwhile, the phenomenon is using that time frame to construct a portal where it can actually download the program it's wanting to download into their world. And so they're thinking, okay, yeah, it's deceased ancestors, not realizing that in that dimension, they're creating a tether to where the phenomenon is seeping incarnation into that room. And so finally, they made a fatal error, right? We're going to now hand over the room to the spirit team. You tell us what you want us to do. That's what the phenomenon wanted the entire time, Sean. Forget about all the other archetypes. Forget about them all. When that took place, a portal opened up in that skull experiment, in that room. And I've been told by people who were there, hundreds of NHI incarnated. Hundreds, Sean. Watch this. This is what I'm saying. We thought apparitions were apparitions, ghosts. We thought extraterrestrials and grays were one thing completely different. And then in the middle, you have guides, of course. Guides are something completely different too. No. When the phenomenon incarnated as the NHI, It took months for them, right, to create that portal for the phenomenon, to keep baiting them. Interface, perform this ritual, perform this seance. And when the time came, they relinquished control to the NHI. Boom. All of the archetypes collapsed into one. They were horizontal. These are separate. The phenomenon took them all, turned it on its head, and collapsed them. Now you have apparitions of grays floating in the room. Now one of them looked at one of the psychic mediums and said, remember, I told you I was your guide. I'm your guide. I'm here. Not separate manifestations, one incarnation. And here's the problem. Again, it seeks to be seen. Once it creates that portal within us, it seeks to download NHI and programs. It's like a pathogen. The problem is that they had somewhat control with opening the door, right? Because it took them months and months to really establish what's called a room. When they did, here's what the phenomenon said: get rid of all of your scientists. Really? Why? Because it's moderating behavior. Don't do that. I want this kind of person here, right? I want this kind of person to observe me. And in that observation, right, it's controlling its environment. Next thing you know, the pathogen dude, I've been told that at that moment, now people are going to say, well, I didn't see this in a documentary. I don't care. That's fine. Right? There's a lot that wasn't in the documentary, and there's a lot that they know in the UK about this, and I've had conversations with these people about it. So I've been told that when the phenomenon manifested as NHI, hundreds of these beings, hundreds of them, not just photographs, not Mr. Blue, in the room, it got so bad that when the first entity incarnated in their presence, right, when that link was successfully established, and the phenomenon downloaded the program in their midst, that there was such a fear that manifested in that room. Literally, it was ontological. An existential dread terrorized them. Flick on the lights. Get rid of the Ouija boards. We've got a problem. What is that? We don't know what that is. All we know is that we've opened a door for it. And so it was an abrupt stop. An emergency stop. They hit the e-stop button. And they hoped, their only hope, mind you, was that they had successfully shut the door. They didn't. And so what we're looking at, again, is the probability that we have the learning matrix, right? The phenomenon does seem to have limitations. There is a time frame it has to have before it can fully download that program. And that when it renders itself in our presence, it seeks to be seen. This is the problem. We're thinking that even the CE5 is self-initiated. Okay? It's not. It's the same thing with the seance. We believe the seances were self-initiated. I'm conjuring you. No, they realized, I guess to their own demise at the very end, that they were the ones being conjured. Just like the CE5, I'm seeking to be seen by you. You're not out there saying, okay, I'm going to focus my intent. No, the intent already took place. It intended for you to seek it out so that it could create this connection. And so that's really where we are, Sean. But this doesn't seem to be, again, it is paranormal. But it's pointing us to the fact that we're not in control of reality, and that when it wants to incarnate a program, it will seek to be seen. And it's really disturbing stuff. It really is.
What do you think is behind the mask?
There's two things going on. Professor Renee Hardy's case study freaked me out, right? Freaked me out. And I know there are people that are going to say... This is
the professor in France that went to the desert and disappeared?
One of them.
Or died.
There's a lot of them.
Died.
Yeah.
Or
allegedly by his own hand.
Yeah, yeah.
And right, but his family goes to the funeral, and a bunch of men show up. They don't know, right? They have no idea who these guys are. They talk to him. Sure, hey, Bob, hey, Terry. They go back to dinner with their family, like, who was that? I have no idea. Didn't belong to any family. He wasn't a coworker, right? He didn't belong to the faculty. What's going on here? Well, let's go pull up the video footage. They're not there. That's what I'm talking about. Where it seems, again, that if these are actual entities, which I do believe entities exist, and even UAP, right? It's not the fact they don't exist. It's the fact that they're manipulating our perception of it. So that is an entity, but that may not be Darren Edna. It's wearing that incarnation, that archetype to interface. But to your question, there seems to be two things going on at once. There is a proto-intelligence there. There's a learning matrix present to where even when rituals are performed, there's something out there that responds to that rendering aspect of the ritual. Help me manifest. I want to manifest you. And phenomenon answers that. So that seems to be another form of consciousness, if you will. But with that said, these entities seem to rely on that. That's the source of the program, the learning matrix, right? And so when we're interfacing with them, again, it's like, okay, I got to install this program, but this program has its own limitations. And here's the limitation. Do you believe in it or not? If you don't believe in it or not, like if you don't believe in this, I have to upload another identity. And sometimes they can't, Sean. Here's why. Again, it goes back to Dr. Gary Nolan's research. It's forcing a reality upon you. Forcing it. And matter of fact, it's not just a paranormal event or an interface event, as I've called it in times past. Again, it's not just paranormal. It seems to be a program that's actually being downloaded genetically into the bloodline of that experiencer. In early demonology, we had that theory, right? We knew the phenomenon was tracking bloodlines. Like I even had one case years ago where it was a couple, and the husband actually reached out to me first, and then I spoke with the wife and him both. What happened was, she's like, I've been having a lot of paranormal activity. She's like, and I don't know why it's picking me. I feel like I'm a targeted individual. And I said, okay, I need you to go back in history, ask a couple family members if your family has any history with the occult. Any. Well, I don't believe that's the case at all. Like, well, just whatever, humor me. So about a week later, I get an email. Sure enough, her grandfather was an occultist. The grandfather was working with an entity. And that entity was trying to download this genetic program into her bloodline. And so now when I'm actually going and talking to her, I'm like, okay, like, what are you experiencing? What does it want? But our conclusion, as well as hers, was that what this entity was doing was it was still in the bloodline, looking for someone, right, to manipulate. But my point here, again, is that if it is a real entity, it would not measure our belief in the image. Again, with that experience I've worked with, the eyes of the entity, do you believe I'm a cartoon character? I don't believe in that at all. Oh, God, what do I have to do now? Right? It's searching. How can I download a new program? And it's not just in modernity, in Ariel Master's book, Eros and Evil, he talks about demonology, and this is fascinating, where we're starting to see, again, these occultists and these experiencers, they were also having their perception manipulated by the phenomenon to where they thought they were flying with demons, going to mountaintops and hills and copulating with horns and hooves and corpses and stuff. It's really dark, sinister stuff. But that was a program too. And they have cases, my friend, where the phenomenon glitched out completely. And they were flying. They were not at a mountaintop. These weren't horns and hooves, and that wasn't a corpse. They were being poked and prodded by metallic objects. And what happened was the phenomenon had created a theatrical production, blinding them by their own vision. Right? What's actually going on here is not what you're seeing with your eyes. And I'm going to take a step further. What is informing the image it's creating, right? What is that? So again, I've been doing a lot of work with like old USSR experiments. And I've mentioned this to you before where, right, they put the blank photograph paper in the envelope, project your consciousness into it.
Mm-hmm.
We want you to put symbols into that paper. Well, again, this gets deeper. And people are going to say, I mentioned this before. I know, but I'm going to go deeper with us. I promise. What we're looking at now is that corpuscular ball of light, that biofield that was hovering in between the practitioner and the paper, it carried energy and information in it. It was triggered by the intent of the practitioner. I'm informing what's going to be on the envelope and in the envelope. So again, they're looking at this in a controlled laboratory in this corpuscular field, biofield, plasma field's moving. It slowly descends down upon the paper. Turn the lights on, right? Turn off the controls. Boom. Here it is, left to right. All of the symbols that she intended to place in the envelope were there. So intention is what changed energy into matter.
Manifestation.
That's fascinating. Energy into matter. Intention did that. So with that case of Dr. Carla Turner's, and I've spoken to the son as well, again, speaking of the phenomenon, implanting images in the minds of the experiencer and then doing something completely different. This woman's laying in her couch in the living room. The father and the son, of course, she's the mother, but the father and son are watching TV. Here comes that. Now, you guys have heard me say it before. This plasma field starts to move through the hallway into the living room. It descends down upon the sleeping mother. She came out of it thinking that's an alien gray. That was the interface. Wasn't an alien gray. It's a plasma field. But who created the plasma field? Right? Who intended to look like an alien gray? Who intended for her to see alien grays? The phenomenon did. So what we're looking at again is, yeah, sure, it could be an alien gray to you, but it's going to sigilize your body. Sure, it's not really an alien gray at all. Again, what informed that image, what helped project that reality and perception over her mind, it was built into that plasma biofield itself. That's what made her think these are grays. Why? Because whoever was projecting that from their mind intended for that to happen. I want you to see me as a gray, but I'm not a gray at all. You're going to have goetic sigils on your body. So what we're looking at again, this gets to the point of like, who are they? What are we actually dealing with? I know that there are factions within our government that believe that whatever we're dealing with are entities that are projecting their consciousness out of their bodies and into this dimension. And that is what is sigilizing people too, by the way, right? Again, the plasma field. That's
like a quantum anchor, basically.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. It's very good. Very good thing. Yeah. Very good way of explaining it. And this gets back to the Collins elite, where people like to poo-poo them. Oh, they were against remote viewing. Not true. Matter of fact, my old publicist is former Orthodox, right? And she's been working with that part of Judaism. And they're of the belief that at least some of the ancient prophets used remote viewing, right, to get access to information. But anyways, what the Collins elite realized was that there was this kind of war going on between our practitioners, not ours, but the government's practitioners of the occult and whatever these beings were. And so at one account said that these practitioners within our government were projecting their consciousness into the realm of the entities to remote view them, which I think that's a really dumb idea. You know, we go spook them. It's like, okay, but good luck, brother. Call me when you wake up. But anyways, that's what they're doing. They tried to remote view, to project their consciousness into the minds of these beings, right? Hoping, again, that through intention and conscious projection, that they could externalize, they could change energy and intent to matter, into matter, and have an effect in their dimension. Collins Elite had a fit. They're like, what are you doing? Right? Like, it's one thing for you to perform rituals and stuff. I mean, that's pretty dark in and of itself. I mean, literally, sacrifices just to get partial manifestation from the phenomenon. But they said you shouldn't be remote viewing them. And so their response, the remote viewers said, look, I don't care what you guys have to say. Again, you guys are religious zealots, and we're going to do whatever we want to do, right? What we want to do. So they remote view the beings. And at the end of their session, something begins to incarnate into their homes, Sean. Not like hitchhiking, but now they started to have symptoms of being remote viewed themselves. Now these entities are projecting their consciousness back into this dimension to basically poke like the chests of these remote viewers. And so my point here, guys, again, is that it seems like some of this has occult connections, in that what we're dealing with, and this is necronetics, for those who are familiar, are occultists either on the other side of the afterlife or outside of this dimension. And what they're doing is projecting consciousness into our world. And so that, again, why did this experiencer see an alien gray but be sigilized, right, with goetic symbols in Theban? Because that's what the occultist intended to be perceived as. That was the intent. So it's fascinating stuff, but there's evidence, that, again, we're living in a construct, and whatever we're dealing with is a species of occultists. And that's why, again, they have to be conjured. They want to be conjured. And what we're realizing is they're not being conjured at all. The conjurers are being conjured, and they act like a symbiotic program that just inhabits belief. So I hope that made sense. And I know, man, my brain's going crazy. I got ADHD, and sometimes, yeah. Anyways, so I appreciate you having me on again, brother.
Any final words for the audience, my friend?
Yeah, so I'm starting my YouTube channel back again, and it's called Parasymposia, for those who want to watch my research. One of the very first guests I'm going to be having is a Doctor of Divinity. She wrote her doctoral thesis on evil spirits. And so I'm sure you guys will like that. So if you guys want to go to my channel too, hook a brother up.
Should go to your channel. I think I always have it in the description, don't I? I always have your YouTube channel in there.
Possibly, but I feel kind of guilty, like I have almost 5,000 subscribers. And I think this last video was the newest video I've published in years. So I'm an idiot.
Take it.
But,
Take it.
Yeah.
Are you at least monetized?
I think so. I'm getting there at least.
Okay.
I remember getting a notification, an actual email from YouTube saying that, you've reached this certain plateau to where now you can monetize.
Did you set it up though? I think you have to set it up.
Probably not, dude. I'll set it up though.
Leaving money on the table, man. Killing me.
I know.
Killing me.
But yeah, they're playing by different rules because they're playing a different game. And if you're more interested in this than anything else, which, like, even the paranormal, if you're interested in the structural system, the architecture of the phenomenon, go to my Instagram page and you'll see a graphic that I've created, because I'm doing a lecture series in Columbia, and I'm having to create these lectures, and that's where I had to create the graphic. But there's like 4 different aspects of it, 3 or 4 different aspects of it.
Let's go clockwise. North.
Yes.
Absolutely.
West. Yeah. And so what we're looking at, again, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's kind of a triangle or a diamond shape. And this would mean, if this model is correct, it would mean that we're not really studying any of these entities in and of themselves, right? We're still trapped within a model of the phenomenon to where it's literally the observer witnessing it, the phenomenon triangulates. It goes, searches for the learning matrix, goes to the proto-intelligence, and it projects this archetype. So what I'm saying is it might be really close. Not out there, not many entities, right? Singular intelligence that's masquerading as them all. And the way I have linguistically structured that, it's called Preternatural Epiphenomenal Philosophy. That's the foundational understanding before we move into necronetics. But that's what I think it is, brother, is that these beings may not exist in and of themselves. They may just be programs that we're co-creating with the phenomenon. But thank you for having me on, brother. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, people are going to be anticipating this episode because, I'll edit it very quickly, but it's just going to be up there for like 2 months. Just waiting. I'm serious. You got a delayed gratification. So anyway, it's always a pleasure, my friend. So thanks, thank you again.
All right, buddy.
If you enjoyed today's video, please hit like and subscribe, and also hit the notification button so you can be notified whenever I post new content. Thank you. Now, if you're enjoying the channel and you want to support it, there are several things you can do. In fact, there are 5 things you can do. The first thing you can do is just buy my books. I got plenty of books out in the market right now, and I would prefer that folks buy a book rather than giving me direct support because they get something out of it. They get a real tangible product. The second way you can support me is by becoming a member on YouTube or becoming a patron on Patreon. And just go to either site and it'll explain everything. The third way you can support the channel is by checking out my merch site, which is here. There's plenty of stuff that you can get to support the channel. And I'd appreciate that you have it and can wear it. Not only do you help support the channel, but you also help promote the channel, and I appreciate that. The fourth way that you can support the channel, and this is really easy, is anytime you want to buy something on Amazon, literally just go to the description below and click on any link, literally any link. The channel gets a cut of that, and it costs you no extra money. You just go through the link, as I'm part of the Amazon Affiliates Club. The fifth and final way you can support the channel is through donations. Now, I don't prefer these because it's more of an expression of gratitude, but you don't really get anything out of it as a subscriber to the channel. However, if you decide to do these options, there's 2 options. There's Buy Me a Coffee, which is a separate site, and there's also, you can go through YouTube with either a super chat, super sticker, or a super thanks. Again, I prefer Buy Me a Coffee because that organization takes less money than Amazon does. But either way, I appreciate any support you are willing to give the channel. So thank you very much and keep watching. I really appreciate it.